You are now tuned in to Believe. Do you believe?
This is Josh Scar from Talking Smack, and you're listening to Karen and Ann on the Sugar Coated Murder Podcast.
Hey, Sugar! Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Do you know why?
Because you're at my apartment and you love your sister.
Yeah, that. But Dan and Lou are on for
I love
casting
Dan and Lou.
news. Yay! I wish there was like a big audience behind us. Woo!
Hello.
They should be doing the wave and stuff.
I am so excited. I've been wanting to be on this show for ages, I tell you.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Don't tease us. Don't tease us.
Been so looking forward to this.
Hey, listen, maybe now is the best time to go ahead and surprise you guys.
Yes, so we've decided we've
decided we're going to come to the UK for Christmas.
Not this Christmas, the following Christmas. So you have a year to plan, a little over a year. Yeah, but we're going to do the... it is amazing because we're going to split our time.
Oh, that's funny because we were coming over there next Christmas, not this Christmas. So we've already.
Well, it looks like maybe we're going to do that holiday movie.
Oh my God!
Totally. Did you ever see Holiday with Jack Black and Cameron Diaz?
I
don't think I've seen that. No.
Yeah, more importantly,
come on over.
What's her name? No. The girl, Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet is in it too. So it is about an American girl and a British girl, and they both are trying to take a holiday, and they end up connecting on some house swap thing. And they each go to each other's houses. So they just completely swap for the holidays. So it's a way to stay somewhere for free. Got this British woman who's from this little village. I don't even know where it was.
And she has a cottage.
She's got the cutest cottage. It makes me think everybody over there lives in a cottage.
We've all got cottages.
Because that's what we're expecting to stay in.
And gates. It's just so cute. And then Kate Winslet goes over to America and stays in this girl's like New York or LA apartment.
It's in LA. Yeah.
It's very posh and modern and everything. It's just really, really
And then
cool.
everybody falls in love.
They all fall in love.
It's so cute.
It's such a rom-com.
We can't wait for you to come over. We'll have a sugar-coated Christmas, eh?
Yeah, damn right.
Isn't their accent greatly?
It is amazing.
Nah, y'all's are.
Yeah.
That's cheese, right?
That's y'all's bird.
Oh, God, sorry. I knew it was sounding familiar. Okay, guys, tell us. We know all about you, but our audience may not. And shame on them if they don't. But anyway, tell us about your podcast. How did you get started? What's the relationship between the two of you? And how do people find you? Ready, go.
Okay, Dan, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Well, tell you what, let me start. Then you take over, and then we'll both kind of chip in because we never do these intros and things right anyway, do we? On our podcast?
I hope you have a song prepared for us because we sang on your podcast.
Oh, we did.
We haven't prepped anything. No, we've barely bought notes for this as well. Anyway, we thought you were going to entertain us. No, we are an uncle and nephew. It might be difficult when you look at us, but I'm the uncle and Lou's the nephew.
It's very evident.
I had no idea.
No, our podcast came about. I kind of, as most I think during COVID, just fancied doing something a bit creative that wasn't just sitting down playing games and stuff like that. So I wanted to do a podcast. Decided I didn't want to do it as a monologue or on my own. So I thought, who do I go to? And I thought, well, the first choice has to be Lou because Lou, you could take it up from me. We have generally random conversations all the time anyway, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We just have random conversations about things going on in the world, random topics that interest us, slightly annoy us a lot of the time, and just chat a lot of general shit, really, just day to day. So we thought, why not put that to market?
It's true. It's so
if
true.
Anybody wants to listen.
And we do. We love to listen. We absolutely love it.
And we don't do anything overly heavy because, there are podcasts that probably do that better than us, but we try to have a little bit of fun. I think we've been informative at times, haven't we, Lou?
Yeah, I think so, to be fair. We talked about world records of shooting balloons with tubes from people's bums. So, I think that's Don't think anybody
then-
that listened to that podcast
I'm
before that
saying
knew that fact. So.
That information is gripping.
And then we've done like the,
Everybody needs that info.
then we've done like the dark side of social media, but so
Yeah.
it's all good. But
I love
you
it.
can-
Y'all have talked about some really interesting topics. I love all of them. So, and I'm always very eager for the next episode to drop. So,
well, I've moved my camera over a little bit because I've got my idea board here, and I didn't want any sneak previews of what's coming up.
you know what? That is so rude. I want to see.
After the show,
Well,
In
now
actual
you're going
fact,
to
you know
have
what it is?
to
It's like-
add a sugar-coated Christmas to it.
We will. Do you know what it is? In actual fact, me and Dan basically just turn around before each week and we're just like, right, what are we going to talk about? We need something to talk about. Then we've got like a just general board of ideas. It's like, yeah, we could do something with that probably.
You know, what would
One
be
of us-
fun is if you each had a small whiteboard in the beginning of the podcast, you just both hold up your idea and the other one has to take the other person's idea.
Oh, that's a great
Side
Oh,
idea.
that is a good idea. Yeah.
That's a little
Casting
bit of-
Views does improvisation.
Yes, a little bit of improv. Ann and I took an improv class and we left that. I don't think the instructor's taught another one since.
I don't think he has. I
I'm
think
pretty
he's
sure he got out
retired.
of teaching the improv business. So maybe next time, maybe we'll perform for you over Christmas.
I was going to say, do a repeat. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
do a
we
repeat.
can. We can
Oh,
totally
yeah,
do it.
no problem.
Yeah,
As long as you've got bourbon and Tupperware, we're in.
Yeah, we drank bourbon out of Tupperware before we went in because we needed some liquid courage.
Well, that's
Yeah, I think we'd be all right
that's
with that.
next episode then, Lou.
Write that on your idea board.
I will.
Yeah, he actually has. He's legit going to have pen in hand. Like, yeah.
He's going to be like, when we see his arms reaching over like this, we know what he's doing.
Right.
I've just written improv. We're going to do an episode on improv. There we go.
Yay. How do people find you?
We are at Casting Views on Twitter. You can find our podcast pretty much anywhere. I tend to like good pods a lot because you can leave messages. What I like about that is you can rate each episode and you can leave a message and we can then feed back on that. And I actually got the merch shop going, so I'm following hard on all of you lot in our
I
little
know.
trust, our little
So
group.
excited about that merch shop. I'm going to be spending my paycheck. I just paid the rent, so now I can spend the rest of my paycheck in the Casting Views shop.
It's just for everyone listening. It's not that expensive, but you can get things for less than a paycheck.
No, I'm going to buy everything now, like one of
bless you.
everything. Like, is there a
Bless you.
Casting Views shower curtain?
Oh, how fun would that
Yeah,
be?
no, there is.
I
Don't
actually
you think
think
my
there is.
husband would love that?
Yeah, your husband would love that. Here are these two
That's right.
blokes.
Yeah, well, you could get so you could get us. You could get us most places. If you can't find us somewhere, let us know and I'll try add us there. But I've actually just done a platform move as well, which has gone stunningly smoothly, which
Yeah,
isn't
good
like
for
me.
you.
So that's good as well, and that's helping already. I can see the little map light up with where people are hearing us.
That's
So,
nice.
yeah,
And
it's
here
all
we
good
are in
fun.
South Carolina listening to you.
Yeah,
We
yeah. I
wave.
see
I
you.
wave
I
every
see.
time. I know. And when I'm listening, I'm like, here I am, guys.
Well, hold on, but Lou, we had something first, didn't we?
We did have something. Do you have any backing that you want to go on this? Or are we just
No,
going
I
to...
don't. I think it's going to have to be a cappella.
It's going to have to be a cappella. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I think so. Are we ready?
Yeah. Do we need
We've got
to...
to start this right. We've got to return.
Well,
them
I
back.
mean, go ahead.
Say, oh,
That's
that kind
the
of
after show.
podcast
That's the
time.
That's the late night show.
That's
Yeah, that's it.
that's Casting Views
That's a
Premium.
Patreon.
That is.
That's on OnlyDans.
Oh my God!
That's
Only
only-
Dan's. Yes,
Yes.
that is a brilliant idea.
I'm telling you.
What'd you say? What'd you say, Lou? On 3?
Should we go on 3? I feel like I should probably do this though.
Oh,
I can't do that. I'm all tied up here. Actually, no, that sounds wrong. But I'm all kind of tied
You're
up.
tied up. He's
I think we
tied
should
up.
be
He's
doing
tied to
this.
the chair.
all right.
Let's go for it. All right, go 3, 2.
Whoa, wait!
Oh,
Wait a minute!
whoa.
Wait a minute! Okay, I need a better
Funny.
countdown now.
He's got the lyrics.
You ready now? Are you ready now?
I'm ready now.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, say,
can you see
by
the dawn's
early light, what
what
so
proudly
we
we
held
held
Wee.
at the
at the
twilight's
twilight's last gleaming,
whose broad stripes and
bright stars through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
And
The rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air,
That's a tough one.
gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave of the land of the free and the home of the brave. I feel it doesn't work. It doesn't help that we're not in the same location to get behind each other.
Yeah, I'm really sorry for anybody listening, but I did stand. I just want everybody listening to know.
He was standing.
Fantastic.
Dan
We
is
tried our
handless
best,
and tied to the chair. So Blue stood.
That's also another episode.
We are on a bit of a delay, which is unfortunate. 'Cause Lou's a bit, but also, we've just come prepared as well. So look, I've got my Pop-Tarts.
Yes.
Yep, got my Pop-Tarts.
But do you have a milk dud?
What flavor are they?
No, I've got my Oreos.
Yes, you do. The chocolate brownie ones.
Brownie.
I can say I would have bought Twinkies, but they're like £10 per box in the
Oh
UK.
no!
Probably like $13. So I was like, we haven't sold that much merch yet. So
When we
lovely
come for
strawberry.
Christmas, we'll bring an extra suitcase loaded with Twinkies and milk duds.
Yes.
oh, Twinkies! I love Twinkies.
No, do you know? No, the milk does. Do you know what? I was really annoyed. Sorry, Lou. I went to the supermarket today where we said they sell all these sweets, and they don't have them anymore.
Oh
They
no!
just didn't have them.
Maybe
I
they're
really wanted my
seasonal.
milk duds.
Oh man,
So,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
They just had the one packet of the one flavour of tarts of strawberry, so I had to make do with those and the choc brownie Oreos.
And say as well, if anybody listening to this hasn't tried Pop-Tarts, wow, bloody amazing.
I just love a Pop Tart. You can't go wrong with Pop Tart. You just cannot go wrong with a Pop Tart. And I like the strawberry. The
Strawberries are fantastic.
as they say, strawberry.
Strawberry.
Yes, the strawberry ones. But good for y'all. We didn't get any digestives.
No, we didn't.
We didn't. We
You
didn't.
came fully loaded to our show.
You
so
did come
no,
fully
we-
loaded.
We did come
certainly
fully
did.
loaded. We did.
Y'all are too sweet. That was very
That's
sweet.
really
How
sweet.
very American.
I know, but listen, I think that the our national anthem sung or sang or sang, whatever the past tense of sing is, in their British accents is
Lovely.
brilliant.
It's
It's just
lovely.
lovely. It just makes it.
Because we, came up with it because we left their country.
I know, and then for them to sing it back
and
to
now they're
us, it's
singing
just
it
so
to us.
meaningful.
It's very
Yeah, I
meaningful.
really appreciate
We've
it.
come full circle.
We have. This is full circle
Yeah, we-
right here.
Do you know what it is? The American national anthem has got lots of highs in it, whereas I feel like God Save the Queen doesn't really have any of that. It's very, very monotone.
Yeah, very
it
serious
is.
business.
And a lot of people mess the Star Spangled
Public.
Banner up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, we
what
tried
was-
our best, but Lou, next time we'll have to be in the same room. I think.
Yeah,
that's
we'll
the-
have to be in the same
Yeah,
room.
yeah.
Maybe we should get
Yes.
together and put a video out on Twitter of us doing it.
Sure.
Please do,
yeah.
while you're like shoving Pop Tarts in your mouth.
Oh, yeah. Pop-Tarts, Oreos, and the Star Spangled Banner.
Yes, I mean,
Not healthy dinner tonight.
I know. Hands down, Whitney Houston sing it the best.
the best.
The
The
best.
best. Yes.
I actually did listen to the Whitney Houston one
Gee.
in preparation for this, but unfortunately don't have the same vocal range as her.
I don't think
No.
anybody does. No, absolutely.
Rest in peace,
I
Whitney.
know. R.I.P. Whitney. So,
Crack is whack.
it really is. It
Just so you know.
absolutely- Like, I think she proved it.
She,
Just saying,
Yeah.
I think she proved it. Like,
she
proof.
did. She really
Period.
did, yes.
Put a period on the end of that
Crack is
sentence.
whack. Period.
Yeah, she did. Bless her. So,
All right.
I think y'all have a murder.
Oh, did you murder someone?
Did you all
Well,
do a murder?
Well, we have murders, don't we? Lou?
We do have murders, lots of
What?
murders.
What?
technically.
I love it when you talk like that.
Oh.
So do you want to introduce who we're doing, Lou? These are like, Lou said, yeah, these are probably top tier when I suggested we do these in British history, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, and for some reason as well, we're going to be talk about a murderous couple. And I don't know what it is about British serial killers, but I feel like there's been a lot of murderous couples in British history. It's strange that...
I think it says a lot about the British marriage because you all are a team. There's there's a lot of teamwork.
Right. Their divorce
I think
rate
in
probably isn't
America,
as
it's
high
just
as
like, I'm
ours.
going to be a serial killer. See ya, we need a divorce. So,
You know, the irony was, so we've got at least another 2 returns to this show because there's 2 or 3 we could have picked easily, right?
Oh,
And then if you had Jack
where's our
the
idea
Ripper,
of board?
if you had Jack the Ripper, we could probably do 4. But I chose this one because I thought it might be the easier one. But when we started looking into it, my God, the stuff that came out of it in the history. So I'm going to try my bit. I'm going to try really make it succinct, if I can say it. Yeah. Do you want to introduce who we're talking about? See if they've heard.
Yeah, so the murderers that we will be talking about are Fred and Rose West.
Never heard of them.
Really?
No.
Okay.
So this is
good.
exciting.
This is good then. So Fred and Rose West were a married couple. I think, Dan, are you going to do like the biography
I'll
on
do
them?
a bit of a background on them. Yeah.
Okay.
You were then going to go into the hard stuff.
The actual,
wouldn't you?
because for some reason, obviously, I'm always doing the dark, depressing stuff on the podcast because I'm.
Well, none of this is happy.
Glass. Yeah, this is true. I'm the glass.
Oh, that's
half
right.
full.
Dan is the you and Lou is the me.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I'm very much the glass half empty kind of guy. So Fred and West were a couple who were involved in at least 12 murders and committed at least 12 murders between 1967 and 1987. Most of them were committed with each other. So Rose West was involved in at least 10 of them.
Wow.
Oh, God.
All of the victims were young women, and at least 8 of the murders basically involved their sexual gratification. So it included rape, torture, and mutilations, basically.
Oh, my.
They lived in a house, and subsequently, I actually think the house has been demolished now because they didn't either want it to be like some sort of shrine, or I don't think if it ever went to market, anybody would have purchased it. But yeah, so they dismembered bodies, and the bodies were typically buried in the cellar or garden of their residence. So Fred committed 2 of them. Sorry, go on, Dan.
No, I was going to say, do you know what I found out though that I didn't know before? They had a neighbour. One of their neighbours then went on to be a spree killer as well, who's now serving a life sentence for the murders.
Shut up. That's so
Maybe it's just-
crazy. Wow.
There must be something in the water on that
Yeah,
road.
they need to rip all the water pipes out of there.
Yeah, I found out as they were doing this. Yeah.
Where did this happen?
So this was in a place called Gloucester,
Seems to
and
be a lot of stuff that happens in Gloucester.
I feel like if Gloucester like a big city or something, I feel like there's a lot of stuff
a
that
lot
goes
of
down
stuff
there.
happening in Gloucester.
yeah, so yeah, Gloucester is a city and a town in Gloucestershire, southwest of England, so close to the border with Wales, basically.
Yeah. So tell you what. So should we go into? So I'll give a bit of background on each one. I think Lou was then going to go into a bit about the victims and the murders, and then we might sort of jump in and out because there's, like I said, I found some fascinating stuff. But if you look at them, if you ever find a picture, they look like just a typical like couple from the 80s, don't they, or 60s or 70s. They don't look anything like you'd think they'd be like a murderous spree killing couple. But you had Fred West was born in September 1941. His mother by 1951 had given birth to 8 children, but only 6 survived. And Fred was his mother's favourite. He was a mother's boy growing up and needed his siblings for companionship. A theme with him was that classmates recall him as being scruffy, dim, and always being in trouble. And this is the thing, and there's no defense or anything, but both of these are quite damaged people from the offset. Yeah, it'll become quite apparent. Yeah, he was always in trouble, but he displayed an aptitude for like physical stuff like woodwork and artwork. He left school at 15, working on a farm. He later claimed that he'd been introduced to sex by his mum at the age of 12, in his early teens, and that his belief that incest was normal stemmed from his father's incest with his own sisters.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, but
God.
Fred's younger brother has always dismissed these as fantasy. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of hearsay. But when you hear kind of then, especially what Lou will probably go into. But by 1957, so what's that? He was 26 then. 16. He was 16 then. So Fred and his
like,
brother
what kind of
went
math
to...
are they doing here across the pond? What's happening?
They went to a youth club and he was aggressively going after women and girls who he objectified as sources of pleasure. If he saw one he liked, he would just go up to them and start fondling them.
Oh my God.
Oh my
Yep.
God.
Yep. And if a girl accepted his advances, she would find his performance unsatisfying, as his objective was his own gratification.
Wait a minute. Who would accept an advance like that?
I know.
Simpler times.
You had your hand is up on my breast. Yes, of course I'll go out with you.
Could you remove your hand from my shirt, please? Yeah, we'll go out.
I guess it depends who he was targeting. Maybe if he was going for the simpler.
My God.
When he was 17, he bought a motorcycle, had an accident and fractured his skull, an arm, and broke a leg. He was unconscious for 7 days and walked with braces for months. Following this is where apparently his fits of rage was supposed to have come from.
The head injury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then here's this: when you're talking about his approach to women, 2 years later, he suffered a further injury to his head when a girl he groped on a fire escape punched him, sending him falling 2 floors.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. This guy.
He's not even 20.
He didn't even meet his wife yet.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
Have mercy.
And just a couple more things on him before I go on to the other person in this relationship. In 1961, his 13-year-old sister told the mum that he had been raping her since the previous December and that he had impregnated her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Sorry, is this? I mean, like I said, I told you this was going to be quite.
I'm going to tell you something. Home run already.
I mean,
Home run.
let's go.
Yes.
But he was freely admitting to police that he had been molesting young girls since his early teens, and he said, "Doesn't everyone do it?" And he was tried on the 9th of November that year. Even though she was disgusted by her son's action, though, Fred's mother had been prepared to testify. But immediately prior to the scheduled testimony, she changed her mind and refused to testify, and the case collapsed.
What? She wouldn't testify against him?
No. Much of the family disowned him. I know, exactly. But, wait till you hear some other stuff later. But much of his family effectively disowned him. His mother banished him from the house and he moved into his aunt's house. But by mid-1962, he had reconciled with his parents. So that's just a really brief rundown on him.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Then we'll go on to Rosemary, or Rose, as she became known. So she was born in Devon. She was the 5th of 7 children born into a quite poverty-stricken family. Now, her mother, when she was pregnant, was suffering from depression and was given electroconvulsive therapy.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh my God! Who made that decision? Who thought that was okay?
And again, they're saying that this is it. And they're saying this might have caused some of the prenatal injuries too.
So? Really? That kid came out with a head injury.
Yeah. So she was quite a moody and precocious teenager, apparently, always daydreaming, performing poorly. Her parents separated when she was a teenager. She lived with her mother and attended school for 6 months before then moving in with her father at the age of 16. Her father suffered from schizophrenia, was prone to extreme violence and repeatedly sexually abused Rose and her older sister. At the onset of puberty, Rose, reportedly fascinated by her own body, would deliberately parade naked or semi-naked around the house in the presence of her younger brother. And on numerous occasions at the age of 13, she'd also creep into 9-year-old Graham's bed and molest him and her youngest brother, Gordon.
Oh my God. What in God's name? What in the world?
So I know this is all quite shocking.
The fact that these two people found each other.
Oh, it's terrible. It's the work of the devil.
It is the work
I'm
of
going to go on
the
to how they met, and then I'll probably hand over to Lou. But they met by they first met each other in 1969 after her 15th birthday, and he was 27. And they met at a bus station that they were both frequenting. She initially was repulsed by him, thought he was a tramp, but then he was throwing her so much attention that she kind of started coming round to that. She twice refused a date with him, but then eventually relented and allowed him to accompany to the house. Now, she initially worked in a bread shop, and he then asked a woman to go in and give her a gift and said that the man outside had presented the gift, which then flattered her again. And after that, that's then when they became a couple, and she would go to the caravan park where he lived. He had 2 children from another marriage, which we may come on to. I don't know what Lou's going to cover, so I haven't mentioned that yet.
Is a caravan park a trailer park?
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That's fancy.
I thought it was a fair.
It's not fair, no.
So he...
It's fine if you live at a fair. It's fine.
Yeah, he had 2 children already, 2 daughters, which we'll come on to later.
Wait.
She noted that they looked neglected, and she initially treated them with love. But within weeks of her first meeting, she left her job at the bread shop to become a full-time nanny to his children. Basically, he was then to give her money so she could give to her parents, so she could pretend she was still working at that shop.
Oh.
Several months later, she introduced him to her family, who naturally were aghast at the daughter's choice of partner. They initially pegged him as arrogant and a pathological liar. And the father basically said, I don't want you with him, and started threatening to call social services if he continued.
Wow.
Yeah. So they forbade him to see her, but obviously she was a 15-year-old kid and defied the parents. So what they then started happening, they started hearing rumors that she'd begun to engage in prostitution at the caravan. So she was then placed in a home for troubled teenagers and could only leave under certain conditions.
Wow.
So where are we?
Wow.
Like when your 26-year-old lover checks you out.
Oh, that is so gross.
Then what it was I think it was when she was 16 or 17, she was pregnant. And so they put her into care again, saying that on the understanding that she would terminate the pregnancy and return to her family, but she didn't. She went back to live with Fred. And then the father obviously forbade her to ever go back to him again. But the rumor here, or the thing that's never been, I think, fully cleared up, is she gave birth to a daughter. So again, it's just another daughter for them.
Oh, wow.
The speculation is that she may have actually been sort of fathered by Rose's father. There's speculation there. So,
because you said that he had molested her too.
Yeah. So there's rumors there. So again, I kind of want to skip through some of this. Fred went to jail for theft of car tires and a vehicle tax disc. So I mean, compared to everything he's going to go on to do,
that's pretty mild.
Yeah, but I think what's key at that bit was then it left Rose to look after all 3 children, his 2 daughters and their daughter together. So I think it was during this time there started to be sort of talk of her neglecting them. In 1971, one of his first daughters was treated for a severe puncture wound to her ankle in the casualty unit by an accident. Marriage, they got married in 1972. 7 months later, she was pregnant with the second child. This is where it starts to get, and I'll say it up now, this is where it starts to get a bit more twisted. So she began to work as a prostitute, operating from a room upstairs in their house.
What? In their house?
Yeah, in their house. He encouraged it. So basically they converted upstairs rooms into lodgings. She engaged in casual sex with both male and female lodgers and individuals that Fred, encountered at his work. And the thing I think
she
like Lou said it all.
She liked the sex. Yeah.
She really enjoyed it.
So she figured out why men couldn't say no. She enjoyed it.
She's never said that.
I got a hankering for some sex and
for some what?
sex. So we'll just open up the rooms upstairs and bring people in.
Yeah. Why not, Fred?
And going back to something Lou said right at the start, this is it. Sex is obviously a huge theme throughout this relationship, this twisted relationship. Basically, she would brag that no man or woman could satiate her.
Nothing to brag about, babe.
And specifically with women, she would gradually increase the level of brutality to which she subjected her partner with, such as suffocating them, partially suffocating them. To many of the women, it became apparent, Rose, and you thought Lou was the dark one.
I was like, it's getting darker. What's happening?
I don't know. This is
basically, I'll skip through this. It became a lot more about violence and pain.
Oh my gosh.
Again, kind of, and I think what I'm trying to say here, though, is that you can see now it's her kind of taking over because she's the one in charge of that element. It's her having the sex. It's her doing the torture. She controlled the family finances. So Fred would give her his pay packets and then she would apportion the money. She would look after it.
Wow.
I mean, he would put peepholes in the room to watch. He'd put a baby monitor in the room to listen so he could listen wherever he was.
And with the children, I mean, why not just have a family affair? Like everybody listen in. What's mom doing?
Well, the weird thing is, though, it says by 1977, so 6 years later, her father then had come to tolerate his daughter's marriage, develop a respect for him, for Fred, and they opened a cafe together.
There's no way that man knew what was going on in this upstairs bedroom.
He was molesting his children. Maybe he did know.
That's true. Maybe he did know. He's the one that started it. Yeah. He started this.
But the other thing, and something I didn't mention earlier, a lot of the people he would work with were, I think, from sort of like the West Indies as well. So the thing is, and that's key here, because by 1983, she'd given birth to 8 children. At least 3 of, at least 3. At least 3 they think were by clients. Fred accepted them as his. And the thing is, the reason I mentioned about the West Indies is because a number of the children had darker skin. And so that they got round that by saying that his great grandmother was a black woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what I'll do is I'll probably leave it there. There's some other stuff that I might come into.
I think we should leave it there because I am scared of where this is going.
Well, Lou may touch on this, but then the next section, there is a lot of then violence against the children, which I won't necessarily go into.
Oh, yeah, we don't like that.
Their own children as well. This is the thing. So, so I think kind of, like I said, there was a lot of horrible stuff there, but I think needed to put that out there to see that these were both very damaged individuals. As we were saying in that break, by whatever fortune, I mean, that's not the right word, found each other. Yeah. And it's just, that the problem? Yeah,
because we were saying maybe if they had each found somebody with a little bit more balanced mental health, then maybe it wouldn't have gone to this level or something.
I mean, police intervention.
I don't know. It's just I feel so bad for these children.
I'll see what kind of then Lou says, but there is so many kind of ifs, buts, and maybes here. But I'll hand over to Lou now for him to pick up from his bit. But that's the pair.
Wow. Gosh, take it away, Lou.
Now we are going to start to get into some of the more like sick and twisted stuff with respect to the murders. So there were 12 that were confirmed in total across Fred and Rose West. Now Fred was, I think, charged with committing 2 of them by himself. Now, funnily enough, it wasn't actually until it wasn't actually him starting to murder people in which he'd actually taken a life before. Because in November of 65, Fred had actually killed a small boy in Glasgow in his van and was cleared of any wrongdoing by police. And the reason that he ended up going back to Gloucester was because he basically feared like a public backlash because of the fact that he wasn't prosecuted for anything.
Wow.
So that's up back in Gloucester. Now I'm going to jump straight into the murders. It's so difficult because this is really so like sick and twisted, and there are so many offshoots to the story of Fred and Rose West. You could probably
Dan
write 3-hour documentaries. He did, yeah. So the first confirmed murder was of an Anne McFall, and she was aged 18 at the time and was also 8 months pregnant with Fred's child. Now, this was whilst he was still kind of entangled with his former first wife, which was Rena Costello. And the Anne McFall was never reported missing, but her dismembered remains were found buried at the edge of a cornfield near Kempley in 1994. Her limbs had been carefully disarticulated and many finger bones were missing from her body. Now, this is actually something that's consistent with a lot of the murders. When they did autopsies on lots of the bodies, there were things that were missing, whether that be bones from knees, feet, hands, and they were likely just kept as keepsakes. They also believe that the unborn child was cut from her womb. He'd denied that he killed Anne McFall initially, but had basically admitted to stabbing her to death following an argument. However, it's believed that he still tortured her because her wrists were found with sections of dressing gown cord wrapped around them, basically suggesting that she'd been restrained prior to her murder. And that was the first one that he committed in 1967 by himself. Following this, his wife, or his previous partner, Rena Costello, actually went to return to live with Fred. So this talks about the caravan park, which Dan touched on. And there was actually a separate murder in 1968. Now, Fred was actually never charged with this murder. It was the murder of a Mary Balsam, and she was a waitress at a cafe. Now, Fred was frequent to the cafe, and so as such, he was immediately suspected. And he actually confessed to killing her after raping her in his car. Now, police were basically unable to charge him because they had no evidence, and her body was still never found to this day.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Wow. Relatively sick. Now, whilst Fred was in prison for stealing tires from cars, funnily enough, of all the things that he could have gone to prison for, the first murder committed by Rose West, I think, is probably one of the most disturbing ones. And the victim was Charmaine West, who was Fred's stepdaughter.
Oh no.
So this was just before Fred's prison release, and she actually took the 3 children to visit Fred, and it's believed that shortly afterwards she was killed by Rose. Now, there's lots of elements of like jealousy and the child being like a naughty child and like talking back and that sort of thing. Really, really strange. And sorry, there's just so much to go through. So yeah, there were all of the forensics basically identified that she died prior to Fred's release from prison, because it's strange. Dan will probably go on to talk about it, and I'll probably jump in with it as well, about how there was kind of a flip-flop between who was responsible for murders. So there was a lot of Rose pinning it on Fred, then Fred pinning it on Rose, then separately admitting that he'd committed murders as well. It was all very, very strange. Now, the next murder was a murder of Rena Costello, who again was the partner. So this was wife, first wife. So this was Fred's first wife, and she had basically gone to inquire with the family about basically the welfare of her children, because they were left with the Wests. She was believed to have been murdered by strangulation in the back seat of Fred's car, and was likely drunk when it happened. Her body was discovered with a short length of metal tubing found with her remains, basically opening up the possibility that she'd been restrained and subjected to a sexual assault prior to her murder. She was extensively dismembered. Now, in terms of the actual detail, you can go and look it up, but it's probably too much to kind of recite here because it's relatively graphic. It was placed into plastic bags and buried close to a cluster of trees near a place called Letterbox Field. And that was of his first wife.
Did they do the dismembering at their house?
Yeah, so it's basically believed that most of the dismemberment was done in the cellar of a home. Later on, it was basically concreted over, and loads of the remains were also basically just buried in the house in and of itself.
The Cultworthy Classic, a cinema podcast dedicated to obscure films and cult classics made before 1970. Join me, Antonio Palacios, weekly on all listening platforms or at TheCultworthy.com. The Cultworthy Classic, we're bringing the classics back.
Yeah, it's actually, again, like Dan said, particularly disturbing. It's really, really quite awful. Now, 1973, this is believed to have been the first sexually motivated killing that they committed together. And this was of a Linda Goff. Now, Goff was actually a lodger at 25 Cromwell Street. And again, linking back to what Dan said about them being just a fucked up pair of people, just generally, she shared sex partners with Rose.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, so she lived there? She was a lodger at their house?
Yeah, so she was a lodger at Cromwell Street, and again, all of this kind of like strange sexual behavior was
sexual
into that. Yeah, it was
it's like
weird.
She knew what she was getting into. Like she was there for a reason. She didn't just happen to think that was, the Holiday Inn is full. Oh, can I just stay with you? Right. Something like that is not what happened.
No.
Now, following her disappearance, Linda Goff's mother actually travelled to Cromwell Street to inquire of her daughter's whereabouts. And Rose West answered the door wearing her daughter's clothes and slippers. So she was wearing Linda Goff's clothes.
And probably said, nope, never seen her.
Yeah, honestly, I know. It literally, It can, and you know what, as well, you go on to look at the rest of the murders and wonder how they didn't manage to get caught. It was really strange. But even the instances of sexual assault that were committed separately, it was a lot of a case that the women were either afraid to fully go to the police to basically admit what had happened pretty much to them. So Rose West basically had told Linda Goff's mother that she'd moved to find work. And her remains were buried in an inspection pit beneath the garage, which was converted into a bathroom. When Goff's body was found, the jaw was wrapped in surgical tape to basically silence her screams, and two small tubes had been inserted into her nasal cavities to allow breathing.
No, she got buried alive.
She was like tortured, basically.
Oh, God.
Long sections of string and sections of knotted fabric were discovered with her remains, and she was likely suspended from holes carved into the wooden beams supporting the ceiling of the cellar. And Fred admitted later on that these holes in the beams were basically there for the purpose of suspending the bodies of the victims. It's likely that she died of either strangulation or suffocation, and he dismembered her body. She was missing vertebrae and numerous finger bones. It's
Are they making jewelry?
particularly
What are they
disturbing.
doing with these
I don't
things?
know. It could be jewelry.
They could have made like a finger necklace.
Finger necklace.
But I don't know what you do with the vertebrae. Like, that's too big for a ring.
Oh, but it'd be a great pendant. Maybe
That's
chunky-
or a pen, a really good brooch.
Yeah.
That's a brooch right there. You paint that vertebrae right up with colors.
Oh,
You
yeah.
got a brooch.
Add a safety pin. You're
Oh.
golden.
That's gross.
It is very, very disturbing. It's
Okay,
mental. And
first
do
of
you know
all,
what it,
his face. The look on your face.
do you know what it is? It's like,
Are they actually making a joke about wearing people's body parts? What am I think he's blinking twice at Lou like
These
saying,
idiots
"Wait,
are
you
not
got to get out of
staying
here."
with my mom.
And you will not be staying with anybody in my family over Christmas.
Lou and I were just emergency texting each other. Like, say, which one of us
Are
is
you
having the power
okay?
cut? Which one of us is having the power cut?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's our depravity. We're so.
It's a way of getting through it. It's a way of getting through it.
I'm sorry.
It
I'm
really
sorry.
is.
I really
It's the
shouldn't
only
talk
way.
about wearing body parts, but I'm just saying, what are they doing? What are they doing?
this is the thing. I've never understood the whole serial killer keeping like body parts thing, and it's weird as well because it just makes you realize like how twisted a person's mind actually
They're
is.
very
Because
twisted.
that's literally like trophy killing, isn't it? It's
I just
Yeah.
wonder if it's a power thing. It's still
Do you keep it in a
after the
cigar
death,
box
yeah.
on your dresser?
No, I don't know.
Where do you put these
Where is
things?
that?
I don't know.
And it's weird as well because like Fred had really strange nicknames for the victims when he spoke to police afterwards. So the next one, again in 1973, was of Carol Ann Cooper, and she was 15 years old. She was actually placed into care after her mother's death, and she lived in the Pines Children Home in Worcester. And she was abducted after spending the evening at a cinema with her boyfriend. She'd been waiting at a bus stop when she vanished and was likely dragged into Fred's car. Again, modus operandi is all the same. She was bound with surgical tape and suspended from the wooden beams of the cellar before her abuse and murder. Just died of strangulation, and her body again was dismembered and buried in a shallow grave. Again, they all kind of follow the same pattern. This one was only a month later, and that was of Lucy Partington. She was an Exeter University student and abducted again from a bus stop, and her disappearance and death may have come within a week of each other. And this is because Fred West had admitted himself into a hospital in Gloucester with a laceration of his right hand, possibly sustained as he dismembered her body. And her body was again discovered in the Cromwell Street cellar.
Oh my gosh. But
Yeah,
this must have been a really big cellar.
Yeah.
It was, and they were all so close to each other. Then 1974, 16th of April. So this is what now 4 months. And this was of a Teresa Siegenthaler. I believe I've pronounced that correctly.
Yeah,
Again, a
sounds about
student at Greenwich Community College, 21 years old. And Fred West referred to her as the Dutch girl. She was reported missing to Scotland Yard when her family in Switzerland had basically stopped hearing communication from her. And Fred West had again murdered her and had concealed her body by building a false chimney breast on her grave to basically try and conceal where the remains were. It was all very quick. Again, 15th of November was Shirley Hubbard. And again, lots of children. So again, Shirley Hubbard was 15 and was abducted again by a bus stop close to the River Severn.
Why is nobody paying attention to these people being abducted at the bus stops?
Right.
What? Nobody's paying attention. They're like one after the other.
I know.
Because, I mean, when you look at it, I think 3 of these already have all been from bus stops and have all been of young girls. It's very strange that there was no...
I don't know what town this is in, but I'm not going there when we go over there.
Well, this was also back in the 70s.
I'm just saying the police are sleeping.
There's definitely got to be something.
I'm not offending.
Sorry, definitely with the police, but I think like Anne was saying, this was the 70s, and like Lou was saying, a lot of these I think are children who probably slipped the police and social services because they're either parentless or they've probably run away. So I think these are vulnerable people, and I think they were quite clever in who they chose.
They definitely had a type that they were
maniacal.
Yeah,
very much so. And Shirley Hubbard, again, had completely covered in tape when they found her body, with a 1/8 of an inch diameter rubber tube inserted 3 inches into her nasal cavity to enable her to breathe. Now, it's really strange to me because, again, a lot of them have the breathing tubes, and I imagine it was because they were subjected to so much torture that they basically wanted to keep them alive for as long as possible, which makes the situation
and they had
worse.
Control of their air, like during that torture time. They could cut it off and, whenever they wanted. So that's
probably
horrible.
to keep them quiet as well. You can gag them, but keep them alive, but keep them quiet.
Yeah.
I can only think that.
Again, it's absolutely mental. So 75. So this was, again, 6 months after the November 74 murder. Juanita Mott, and she was a former lodger at Cromwell Street, but was living with a family friend at the time when she disappeared and abducted when she was hitchhiking along a B road. So it's basically just like a kind of like dual carriageway almost in the UK. And again, he referred to her as the girl from Newent. Again, so really strange, like the Dutch girl, Tulip, one of them was called the girl from Newent. Then the 10th of May, so this is literally 30 days later, Shirley Robinson, 18 years old, again, another former lodger at Cromwell Street. Robinson was bisexual and engaged in casual sex with Fred and Rose West, and at the time of her disappearance had been 8 months pregnant with Fred's child, and her baby boy was due to be born 1 month later on the 11th of June. Now, there was no sexual motivation for the murder, and they basically believed that the Wests murdered Shirley Robinson on the basis that the pregnancy would basically threaten the relationship between Fred and Rose. And what's even worse about this is that Fred had originally planned to sell their baby to a childless couple and had photographs taken with Shirley Robinson for this purpose.
Oh, wow.
And then he killed her.
Yeah.
Or it could be that Rose killed her and he was like,
maybe maybe Rose was like, I don't like this.
Yeah. Again, one that they were both charged with in the end.
I just
Alison
feel like
Chambers.
It's weird that they think that the baby is going to damage the relationship between these two. Like that's
Not
what
the
they
baby.
think is going to damage it's a damaged relationship. There's no coming back from
the murder
this.
is not going to damage. The baby is going
the baby
to
is what's going to damage this.
An extramarital pregnancy is the least of their concerns at this point.
Yes. Just when you get to the point that there's going to be a real baby, we got to get rid of that.
Yeah.
That's going to damage our relationship. It's so healthy otherwise.
And then there was a little bit of a pause. So that was the 10th of May with Shirley Robinson. And then the next confirmed murder was on the 5th of August, 79, more than a year and a half later. This was of an Alison Chambers, 16. And again, kind of sharing the theme of potentially children that had kind of been lost in the system, was placed into foster care at the age of 14. She'd become acquainted with the Wests in mid-79. And Fred had claimed that she died as a result of Rose West becoming too vicious with her. Her body was found dismembered, missing bones, with the leather belt looped underneath her jaw and tied at the top to basically keep her mouth shut.
Gosh.
And again, was buried in the garden of Cromwell Street. And it was the final murder where there was basically a definite sexual motive. So again, the thing that's consistent with all of the previous murders is that they were all bound, tied up in the cellar, and Fred and Rose West did anything that they wanted to do, basically. Particularly sick. It's really strange. And then again, there's a long pause here because this murder is in 1987.
Oh, wow.
And is probably the most disturbing one, I think, for the relationship. So this is the murder of Heather West, who was 16.
Oh,
so
no.
Heather West was the child, and she had complained previously to friends about the abuse that her and her siblings had endured, because, again, something that was consistent through all of these years was basically the abuse of children and their own children. It was, again, a particularly grim murder in and of itself. So Fred and Rose basically had considered her a danger to them because she had tried to leave the household and had basically tried to run away. She applied for jobs and did everything that she possibly can, basically, to try and get out of the house. They told the other siblings that she had been accepted for a job to try and kind of cover it up. It was, it's particularly sick, basically. Fred claimed that he'd not intended to kill his own daughter, but carpet fibers found on 2 lengths of rope discovered with her remains suggested that she had been restrained and subjected to sexual assault prior to her murder.
The daughter?
His own daughter.
What does he think that's gonna? Sorry, I accidentally murdered you while I was sexually assaulting you, but I thought that would keep you here.
I just wanted you to stay.
There's no, their frontal lobes are missing.
And that's the really, I mean, there's obviously a lot of sad things in here, but the children, especially, I mean, something to say. So Fred was absolutely despicable. There's reports of obviously raping and he murdered the last one, but it was Rose that was basically abusing them throughout their life. So there's a couple of instances where she would give them tasks to do and they lived in fear of getting them wrong. So between 1972 and 92, the West children were admitted to casualty of hospitals 31 times.
Wow.
Injuries, they were explained as accidents and never reported to social services.
Wow. Wow.
One occasion, one of their sons was mopping the kitchen floor. She stepped into a bowl of water he was using. She hit him over the head with the bowl, kicked him in the head and chest, as she said, "You did that on purpose." Another time she became angry about missing utensil, grabbed a knife that she'd been using to cut a slab of meat and put light scale marks on another daughter's chest until her ribcage was covered with wounds.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. And nobody is paying attention. Nobody.
And so again, so it's just the systematic abuse they were getting from both parents in different ways. And, you know, but she was just, I mean, use the word unhinged. So there was a time in 1974, we've got here, that she was chasing after him. Rose was chasing after Fred with a carving knife after an argument. He manages to slam a door. She lunges at the door. It goes into the knife, and she almost basically severs half her fingers because she was gripping onto the knife hard.
Oh, wow.
And this is all in front of the jury. But she calmly gets a towel, wraps it up, and says, "Look what you've done now, fella. You've got to take me to the hospital."
Oh, wow.
Like,
so sorry, I just kind of wanted to add some little bits to what you said there.
Genuinely, there is so
it's just
much.
an everyday occurrence. These poor kids were born into hell.
Yeah. And just parents are just running amok. Oh.
And actually, sorry, just one thing I wanted to add about the first wife, that Rena Costello, who he killed. So I think, I can't remember which way it was started, but he was having an affair. She was having an affair. They allowed each other to have the affairs. But then he would start beating her and the daughter. His wife's lover got angry at that, so would attack Fred. But Fred wouldn't defend himself. He would allow himself to get beaten by this guy.
Oh,
what is this?
Because he liked the pain.
Do you think he liked that?
Oh, I do. Absolutely.
But he was obviously abusing and assaulting his children and the other women, but he was allowing this man to dominate him.
He was just a coward. I think he was a coward.
Yeah.
He took his anger and depravity out on people that were weaker than him. But when a person that matched him or was stronger, I think he was a coward.
It's just so sad. And going through the victims that Lou mentioned, the youngest was 8, and these are just the known ones. The outlier was his wife at 27. Otherwise, I think it's 21. They all aged between 8 and 21.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was actually Heather West's murder that was really the reason that everything came crashing down on them. Just a little point of note about the circumstances surrounding her murder as well. So again, her body was dismembered with a heavy serrated knife and later buried in a hole in the garden, which Fred had his son dig under the pretense of installing a fish pond. Now, there's actually a quote here. So it's from Fred West, and this is in 1994. So I'll read it because it's about the murder of his daughter. So he basically found out that Heather had died, and this is his quote. I mean, I thought the bloody world of Heather. So anyway, I got to grips with it after a while. And the first thing that came into my mind was I'm going to have to take this and sort it out, which I did. All the messes Rose got herself into, I took the fucking rap for them and helped them out. So anyway, I said, you'll have to tell me exactly what happened. She said, after Heather was cut up, well, I never felt so ill for a few seconds, a few minutes before I could get to grips with myself again. And I said, what on earth did you cut her up for? She said, she wouldn't fit in the dustbin. Now, the thing that makes it hard is that she cut Heather up and chucked her in a fucking dustbin, her daughter in a dustbin.
Wow.
And so
How old was her daughter? How old
that was 16. She was 16 at the time.
God. She wouldn't fit in a dustbin.
Again, just something in terms of in terms of the parents taunting the children as well, kind of leading on from the abuse. Fred occasionally joked and said that the other children would end up under the patio like Heather if they ever misbehaved.
That is
unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable.
Yes.
And then, again, just before we go on to kind of the afters and the arrests and that sort of thing, there are actually numerous rapes of Fred's 13-year-old daughter to Louise. So she was raped at least on 3 occasions, and Rose personally witnessed one of the rapes. And she told her daughter, well, what did you expect? You were asking for it.
Oh, Lord.
But I don't know where these people are, but I really hope that they're hanging from a tree somewhere.
Me too.
Just saying.
We'll get to that. But just to tie a couple of things up that Lou said there. So basically the last couple of things he said is what was the beginning of the end for them. So they murdered their daughter Heather in 87. Then in 92, he was accused of raping his 13-year-old daughter, as Lou said, 3 times. They were arrested for that, or Rose was arrested for child cruelty. He was arrested for rape. That then brought to light, their children went to foster homes, which brought to light the missing other daughter.
Where's the
and
other?
that's then, and it's that. So, ultimately, it's they did too many things. They did far too many things. But it's the fact that they couldn't stop. They didn't want to stop. They couldn't stop.
No,
and
they
the
really
fact that they were focusing on their own children is a downfall.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
gosh.
probably what happened was the authorities went into the house to try to find the daughter, and they probably discovered a whole garden full of people.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that is such a Wayne Gacy situation. Not with, just with all the bodies, just the bodies upon bodies.
Yeah, do you know what it is as well? It's like literally the just like sheer depravity of all of the murders in and of themselves.
Horrible.
Is the most horrific
these
thing.
are really, really. I understand they were damaged as children, but there is no damage that can ever excuse what they did as adults.
No.
And they really are like the lowest of human form that I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's what I was saying at the start. There was there's no defense to them, but it's just to say that these two, their life was only ever going to go one way. And the fact that they found each other just meant
awful.
Everyone around them was going to suffer. And
yes.
that's the problem. It's like there's just there is nothing in their story of any good.
There is no redeeming qualities about them at all.
No. From the start when she was a youngster, abusing her brother.
Yeah.
So just, even the parents, we don't even know the full story of, say, her parents.
Right.
And what maybe they should have been put away for potentially.
Right.
Nasty.
Oh, they are
very
they
sick.
Really are disgusting. Well, you really brought a doozy with you.
Well, Lou, did you have anything about what what ended up with them? Or...
Yeah, do you want to lead on to what happened with them? Because I've got a little bit. Well, I mean, do you want to do a bit on Fred? If you've got a bit on Fred.
No, you got it. I've just got the general incarceration and what happened. But
okay, right. So again, basically, just to cut a long story short, because this has been a relatively long story. So the murder of Heather West basically sparked investigations from the police, long story short, and they had searched the West household on the pretext of searching for stolen property. They actually found lots of pornographic videos, both homemade and commercial. And they actually, it was one of Fred West's rapes of his daughter Louise was actually filmed. However, the police never found the video of it. And basically the police at that point had begun a full-scale investigations following the discovery of all of the videos and footage and that sort of thing. Bear with me. I'm trying to frantically scroll through my notes.
No, you're
Okay,
fine.
go ahead. I'll take a sip of water.
Water.
bottle of water.
No, it's a goddamn bottle of water. Marianne, bring me my fucking beer.
That's amazing. So perfect.
Oh, amazing. He was in my house. Who was that?
Oh gosh, that's hysterical. You did so good. I don't know. You must have been practicing for a week.
Amazing.
I might give you a little bit more of that later on.
What?
Yeah, Fred West had initially basically insisted that Rose had no knowledge of any of the murders, and basically the investigators suspected otherwise. So at this point, they had already arrested Fred on the basis of the murders, and Rose was arrested in 1994, basically subsequent to his arrest. They were jointly charged with 5 counts of murder, with Rose simply saying, "I'm innocent," upon hearing every one of the charges. And it actually proved to be a theme throughout each of the 46 interviews held with her prior to her trial.
Wow. I'm innocent. I'm just wearing this lady's clothes. I know she's in my garden, but I have nothing to do with her death.
And how do you fancy my pen? My brooch.
How do you fancy my painted brooch?
It's a very much, I think she took a no comment stance on basically everything that she was asked. Now, Fred, on the other hand, actually just admitted to all of the murders and had actually admitted to the ones previous as well. So he agreed to identify the burial locations, and remains were unearthed of lots of different victims, again, apart from the girl in the cafe. He was put on suicide watch in Her Majesty's prison in Birmingham, and he was checked on every 15 minutes.
Wow.
They were brought to the magistrates' court. So basically, the way the court system works in the UK, I don't know how it works in the US, is that irrespective of whatever crime you commit, you go to a magistrates' court, and magistrates' courts are a panel of 3 members of the community, I guess. They are people that have got are usually retired, and basically they decide whether or not the case needs to go to a higher level court. So they're basically just there to decide whether or not it's within their remit. So magistrates will basically just turn around and say, yeah, this is something we can't deal with. It needs to go to the Crown Court, and the Crown Court are then the ones with a judge and jury.
Okay. With the wigs.
Yeah, with the wigs. Funnily enough, a lot of people thought that the whole wig wearing thing in courts was just not a thing, but I can tell you it definitely is.
Yeah. Well, we watched The Real Housewives of London.
We did.
And
one of them was an attorney, a barrister.
And she did wear the
The
wig.
Real Housewives of London. We get of Orange County and stuff like that over
There
here.
was, I think, just 1 or 2 seasons. It was not very long.
It wasn't a long season, but there was a Real Housewives of. And now one of them is on the Real Housewives of Dubai.
Yeah,
moved to Dubai.
So one of the ladies from London,
Carolyn Stansberry.
Yes. But yeah, so there was, you got to look that up. There was a
Real Housewives
of London.
Yeah.
I loved that one.
It was awesome.
I'm so sad that they took that away.
Me too.
See, this is so strange because we would just watch like the Real Housewives of Orange County or something like that here.
We have that too.
Were their fights a lot more reserved over here? Oh, darn you. How dare you talk to me?
There was
no, they weren't.
They were pretty catty.
Yeah, they were catty.
They were pretty catty. I was pretty I don't know.
They
Impressed.
used some language.
They did. Some
They weren't
language
as
was
scrappy,
said.
maybe as
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
They held their own.
it was interesting. It was a good show. I loved that one. They should bring that one back.
I agree.
Maybe we should do an episode on like British trash TV.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be a good one.
Or
Well, we've
maybe
got that,
later
Lou.
do.
We've got that.
Oh shit!
It's on
Sorry,
the
that's
board.
on the idea.
Is
board.
it on your board?
It's on the board. Wait, here's Dan. Oh, I see
there it is.
A picture. Oh, what is it? Stop wiggling. Y'all should start a Real Housewives of Bigglesweet. And y'all can be the housewives.
Patreon.
Yeah, exactly. That's Casting Views Premium. That is.
That
So,
would be
yeah.
premium.
They were both charged. So he was actually charged with all 12 murders, and she was charged with 9. Now, since both of their arrests, it was actually the first time they'd seen each other in court, and Rose West actively ignored her husband in court. Now, Fred West actually took this in a rather bad way. He became particularly depressed. And what he did is he retracted all of his previous statements and confessions and insisted that his wife was basically completely culpable for all of them.
Oh, he said,
You're gonna ignore me?
me? You're not going to
Yeah,
talk to
yeah.
me? Let's
He
just,
was like,
let's just go.
He was like, "Yeah, bitch, yeah, you're
That's
gonna give me
right.
the cold shoulder in court." He was like, "Yeah, I'm
I'm going to dump all this on you." Yeah.
But that's the thing. Everything that they did together, all the nasty stuff they did, and her blanking him
Yeah.
is all it took for him to act like a criminal.
Exactly.
It's-
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
and
Well, I
then
think
he
it's.
actually-
I really think it's because a lot of this he did. I'm not saying he is not culpable in this, but I feel like, just like y'all said in the beginning, she was the leader of this. Like I
I
think
think
that
he
she,
enjoyed it. Yeah.
I
and
think
she
he
took
enjoyed
control.
it. He took part in it,
Yeah.
full-heartedly. But I think that I think a lot of these really depraved things were coming from her.
She took control. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
but again, a lot of the rumor is that her being a woman obviously helped lure younger girls basically
Yes.
to the property as well, because they were just more trusting of her.
I mean, and he did rape his children. I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
she can't make him do that. So, I mean, he did it. But I just feel like that a lot of this was her.
Yeah.
I shouldn't.
And he actually ended up blaming the murder of Anne McFall, which was the one that he was having an affair with and had a child with. And he
Right.
claimed that murder, he didn't blame that on Rose. He said that murder had been committed by his first wife, Rena Costello.
Oh, no.
May as well bring her in.
Oh,
He was just
Well,
he was like, you know, while I'm coming for all of them, fuck my ex-wife as well.
right.
Well,
I got beef with her
but
too.
on that, something I forgot to say, that McFall, though, she was, I think, a friend of the family's nanny. So they were all linked still.
Oh,
So
God.
she was
Wow.
the dead ex-wife. This
Mhm.
girl was a friend of her family's nanny. So it was all
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
tentacles
crazy.
everywhere.
Tentacles. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now, on the dawn of the new year, you would expect that this would be a particularly fun time for most people, but not for Fred West, because on the 1st of January 1995, prior to ever going to trial, he was found hung in his prison cell after his suicide watch was relaxed. He basically committed a suicide by, do you know, like tension? So he's basically tied sheets around his neck, tied it to like a door handle, and then just got on his knees and strangled himself.
yeah.
Which is actually, I would imagine, a particularly difficult thing to do. And he did actually have a suicide note, which he wrote. And it was again really strange. So I'll read you his suicide note because it's here.
Okay.
To Rose West, Steve, and May. Well, Rose, it's your birthday on the 29th of November, 1994, and you will be 41 and still beautiful and still lovely, and I love you. We will always be in love. The most wonderful thing in my life was when I met you. Our love is special to us. So, love, keep your promises to me. You know what they are. When we are put together forever and ever is up to you. We loved Heather, both of us. I would love Charmaine to be with Heather and Rena. You will always be Mrs. West all over the world. That is important to me and you. I haven't got you a present, but all I have is my life, and I will give it to you, my darling, when you are ready come to me. I'll be waiting for you. And if you read that in any other context, that'd be some sort of like emotional note. But you know what?
Yes.
Fuck this guy. Fuck this guy. And you know what? Do you know what's a shame is the fact that he never got to trial for anything that he ever did.
No, and that's the thing that really
took the coward's way out.
Now I've got the final notes on her, Lou. Are you all right if I?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, good.
But just to say, that really pisses me off about him taking his own life, because it really was everything he's put those people through. Because I'm sure it's the same in the States. If he'd have ended up in a proper prison here, he would have had some justice in there. Let's say.
Yes, he would have. Yes,
definitely.
Although some people would disagree with that, but anyway. So ultimately, in the trial for her, she pleaded not guilty to 10 charges of murder. So basically, as Lou was saying, the murder of one of his stepdaughters was added to the original 9 after Fred's suicide, and 2 counts of rape and indecent assault of young girls have been dropped off for a review later on. Though her counsel conceded that circumstantial evidence indicated Rose's willingness to subject young girls to sadistic physical and sexual abuse. Her trial at Winchester Crown Court began on the 3rd of October with the jury, and an important decision by the judge was to admit testimony related to the sexual assault of 3 women by Fred and Rose. Now, after 7 weeks of evidence, the judge instructed a jury that emphasizing that circumstantial evidence can be sufficient for the finding of guilt, and that if 2 people take part in a murder, the law considers them equally guilty, regardless of which of them did the deed. On the 21st and 22nd of November, the jury returned unanimous guilty verdicts for all 10 murders. Terming her crimes appalling and depraved, Mr. Justice Mantle sentenced Rose to life imprisonment, emphasizing that she should never be paroled. Now, over here, life generally doesn't mean life. It's like 20 years, isn't it, Lou? 25 years?
So depending on the offence, it's usually 25 years, but it always comes on the basis that at some point you'll be eligible for like a parole review.
But here they later decided that she should spend at least 25 years in prison. But then in 1997, the Home Secretary at the time subjected Rose to a whole life tariff, which was only the second instance of a whole life tariff imposed on a woman in modern times. Now, that other woman is probably someone else we could bring to another episode future, Myra Hindley.
Yeah. Oh.
I don't know if you've heard of Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, but they were another couple, but we won't say anything more about them.
Let's not say any more because
we'll bring you back on Valentine's Day for that one.
All I would say, what I would say about that, she's obviously then made many appeals, but they refused to even consider her application.
Yeah.
But then in 2001, she then announced her intention not to appeal, but still maintaining her innocence. Now, the final note I've got on this is that apparently in a 2020 documentary, they did a program on both her and Rose West and this Myra Hindley, who was also in prison. Apparently, they grew close in jail, bonding over their crimes, had an affair, but then they cooled off as they became rivals to be top prison royalty. It's just, you couldn't make this stuff up.
Oh my God!
Wow. So that's the story of them now. And as I said, what does a killer look like? But when you hear everything they were doing and how these people were falling for them, if you look at them, they would just be like a couple in a 70s photo.
It just looked like somebody's aunt and uncle.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Can I actually just say as well about Rose West, at one point, she actually tried to claim like a mistrial almost, because she basically said that the reports of the murders had been reported so heavily in the media that she would never get a fair trial, and the UK justice system basically said, "Go fuck yourself. We don't care."
Yeah, we don't care. We don't care.
And and the significance of the whole life order. Now, whole life orders aren't really a thing properly in the United Kingdom. So again, life doesn't really mean life. Whole life orders, I actually think that currently there's probably only about 65, 70 prisoners in the UK that are on whole life orders. And that's because they needed to be given, or they used to be, the courts can do it now. They used to be given only by the Home Secretary. And basically the Home Secretary is like the highest office in the land for basically all home affairs. And they would turn around and say, no, we're going to impose a whole life order on this person.
Wow.
But relatively significant because they're just not given out very often.
Yeah. Well, they made a good decision on giving that one.
And also, if we don't have life sentences, if she got 10 life sentences, they'd be served concurrently. Whereas in the state, I think they're added on, aren't they? You
Not
would say.
necessarily.
It depends.
We have had a lot of
Depends on the
instances where
judge,
they're
yeah.
concurrent, and it drives me
Oh, okay.
insane. It drives me
I
crazy.
always thought it wasn't. I always thought it was.
No.
It was summed up.
It's because we watch like documentaries here where it's like Trevor Noah going around prison. Like he's talking to a prisoner and they're like, how long are you here for? And he's like, I got goddamn 593 years. I fucking kidnapped 16 goddamn people. And that's
And I fried them in oil and served them. And then they gave me 500 years.
Yeah. But it's always the complaints over here that life doesn't mean life. And if someone's given 10 life sentences, well, they'll still be out in 20 years.
Oh,
Well,
so where is she? Where is she? Is she still in prison?
Yeah, she got the whole life
Yeah.
order. She's not coming out.
Just making
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Not
so
coming out.
We would rethink our whole plan if she was on.
Oh yeah, I'd be like, can't go.
No,
Can't go if Rose is away.
No.
About.
about
Yeah,
boat and a boat.
She's actually 68 years old, still in prison.
Wow.
And the thing is, as well, even as a prisoner like that, like I imagine that you'd have to be on particular watch because you're just so well known. Like there's no way that you'd be in a British prison and people wouldn't know who Rose West was.
Yeah, I think that probably she's royalty, like you said. She's like prison royalty.
Right.
I mean, we watched Orange is the New Black. We know how it goes.
We know how it works.
We know how it works in prison.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
but
That was
that's-
amazing. Wow.
that was impressive, guys. I'm very impressed with how low you went on this. Like you
Well,
were all in.
It's like we were saying in the break. I don't remember. This was eye-opening doing this because I didn't remember how bad it was. Yes,
Yeah.
I knew they were murdered. I'm not going to say that I knew that I thought in any way this was an accident or anything like that. But I didn't know how deep this went.
Sure.
And I think I was saying to you, Karen, Lou, this was before you rejoined. I'm just wondering if this was pre-internet. This was, you only heard what you heard on the news. You only read what you read in the papers, and none of this would have been made public.
And it makes me wonder, when they went spaces in between, what were they doing? And were there more victims?
Well, yeah.
There were
So
rumors
yeah.
of another 18, weren't there, or 20?
Yeah, so it's
Wow.
rumored to be up to 30 in total.
Yeah, I would think so.
Because Fred West, I think in total there's about 120 hours of Fred West interview tapes of him both either basically saying that he did it all himself prior to then turning around and trying to drop Rose West in it as if he needed to do that.
Yeah.
So there's so much in terms of the tapes that there are and everything leading on from it. But yeah, particularly sick. Like
And
it's
and I guess this was what?
really.
When were they convicted? 94.
94, yeah.
So I would have been 17. So I was probably sort of old enough to be obviously paying attention to it, but probably not.
But not really.
Attention to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably just a passing headline for you. Like it was probably talked about for a week and then it was gone because you're 17 and it's like so you feel like it's so far removed.
Right.
You didn't have wall-to-wall news channels then.
And no, 24 hours.
24
a
hours.
day.
No.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And do you know what it is as well? One thing that I would say, because there's a little bit of follow-up on a little bit of Rose West now, is the perception that we have of British prisons and American prisons are very different. So we imagine, or at least I imagine, I won't speak for Dan necessarily, that American prisons are very much, you're locked in a box for 23 hours a day, you get an hour worth of exercise time and that's it. Whereas in the UK, typically, you do get access to lots of creature comforts, basically. So again, there's a little bit of an article that goes on to talk about how Rose West is particularly welcoming of new convicts, and she spends her time baking cakes and listening to music in prison.
Oh gosh, bully for her.
Yeah, but
over
again,
in the United States, I mean, prison is not a cakewalk.
No.
But if you are on death row, or if you're in solitary, or if you're for some reason kept away from the public, those are the people that are like 23 hours a day, you're locked in a box kind of thing. They get served their meals right there in their room, slid through the door and all that stuff. But that's not the case. Even with murderers, that's not the case when you're in general population. It's more of a you get locked in it's almost like getting locked in a dorm room where the bunk beds, two guys are in there, and it's very small, and it's got a toilet next to the bed, and there's like a small table with a chair, but it's very small. But during the day, they come out of there and there's a common area where you have access to like exercise equipment, TVs, there's a bank of telephones, like it's just kind of huge open air. Now, the problem is when it's huge open air, you have access to each other.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. But, they get so many, they can spend so many dollars a week on commissary stuff. So their family members can send them money so that they can get extra snacks and stuff. But it's not, it's not what you see in the movies at all. So
I guess we don't have death row here. And also over here, there's the whole debate about should prison be a punishment and or rehabilitative? So a lot of people are saying it should be a place for rehabilitation.
Yeah, that's what we do a lot of rehabilitation here. And
we do a lot of rehabilitation in our prisons.
I disagree with it for certain crimes. So somebody like Rose, I would say no.
I wouldn't trust her to ever be out on the street again.
No. Or to be in a better. The problem that we have with some of the rehabilitation programs is that the prisoners who are in the bad prisons end up going to a lower level prison, and it's a nicer facility and they have more freedoms.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how they do their rehabilitation. And for certain crimes, I don't think they should get that. I don't think either. That
No, sorry, I was just going to say my view on her is that she's been, for whatever reasons that, like I said in the background, she's been in that kind of frame of mind since she was 13.
Yeah.
It's programmed in.
Lived that life. Yeah.
Right.
So, and then the first thing she did when she's in prison is apparently have a relationship with
she hooked up with another broad.
With the other mass murderer of like female mass murderer in the UK.
Gosh.
So it's a mindset there is, Yeah.
I mean, our prisoners have access to education. That's one thing they have. Some of them come out with bachelor's degrees.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it's, that doesn't cost them any money.
It costs them $0. Meanwhile, the rest of us are, going into forever debt.
Trying to get an
education. Debt that will follow you until the day you die.
Yep.
To get an education.
It's crazy. So, I mean, I see good in it and I see bad in it because I just think that when you have a serial killer or somebody whose crimes have been so low and depraved, I don't think that they should get a chance to be rehabilitated. Or rehabilitate the hell out of them, but just don't let them out. Rehabilitate them, but don't put them on the other side of the wall.
No.
Do you know what it is as well? Is I feel like there are some offences that are just things that can't be rehabilitated. So I think for the most part, most people commit crime out of either like necessity. So it's like, thefts and robberies. And I've always said in reality, like a person can kill another person. So for instance, if your life was threatened in any capacity, you would have the ability just through like your natural fight or flight response to kill another human being. Where I think, because it gets to the point at which a person can't be rehabilitated is where there's instances of sexual violence. So again, like Fred and Rose West, and things with respect to children, because I think those two things are things in which that person must be taking pleasure from. And so as a result, how can you rehabilitate them? Because their brain is just wired in a way.
I agree.
Do you know what I mean? So there are some murders. I mean, we've seen it here where you've had like fights and people have hit the ground, bumped their head and died, and then a person goes to prison. In that instance, you're looking at it and thinking about, well, the intention wasn't any kind of satisfaction from that case. It wasn't a of defense. But with these offenses where it's stuff to do with sexual violence and or children and offenses.
Then that is, you're right. That's coming from a pleasure place. And I just don't think that you should even have the opportunity to, while they're in prison, if you want to get that cleaned up, that's fine. I just don't think that they should ever be outside.
I agree.
Of the prison.
And that's the thing. And I was just going to say, kind of, Lou, you're always, in my mind there. The thing is, a murder, potentially two murders, you might be able to try and get out of. But we're talking about 30.
Exactly. It's a way of life.
Also the torture and the games. This was a game to them.
Yes.
And thirdly, killing children, and
they went after the most vulnerable people.
Yeah. But their own as well, their own children as well. Now, I'm saying any child is bad enough, but they didn't even see their own children.
Yeah, there's no humanity
as well.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
There's no humanity in them at all. So,
yeah, you can't say there's anything about them that you could say any court, any jury, or anything could say. Look, no, there's got to be something. There's too much. There's
I agree.
That was a doozy.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's just take a breath, everybody.
Wow, we're gonna
okay.
have to
we're
burn
fine.
some sage.
We're okay. We're good. But
I do also want to say sorry that there was some bad language there, and I want to say sorry to your mama.
Oh my God! Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You can bleep that, or put a.
So, it's not anything to do with Karen and Ann. It's Lou and I.
Thank you so much for taking that.
Oh, she's gonna love it.
She's gonna love that.
We're Brits. We've got terrible mouths. It's awful.
And aim any bad messages at Lou, though. Care of Lou.
Care of Lou. Yes.
Yeah, we apologise now. We should have said it at the start. But
no, do you know what it is though? Do you know what it is? I think that swearing just accentuates a sentence sometimes. Sometimes it's like it does. It just adds a little bit of a punch to what you're trying to say.
It wasn't just the swearing, no. It was some of the twisted things we were saying.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, maybe. Yeah. Okay, never mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when you're reading this stuff, you swear because it's so awful.
Right.
You have to let it out.
Yeah.
My partner, I was going, oh my God. She was saying, what? I said, did you know what they did? And I was telling her. And then the first thing she said was what you said in the break. How did they end up together? It was like how
gosh, it's like something went bad in the universe.
Yeah. There's a hole, a nick somewhere. Somebody sprayed hairspray and things went bad.
Somebody had some bad juju. That was so bad.
Do you have a murder?
I have a murder.
Hey y'all, you're going to have to stay tuned for part 2 of this incredible episode with our friends Dan and Lou from Casting Views. Stay tuned.
This has been Sugar Coated Murder Podcast, a deliciously entertaining true crime podcast. Like what you heard? You can always explore past episodes by visiting sugarcoatedpod.com. Don't forget to like our Facebook fan page and share with friends. Thanks for listening to Sugar Coated Murder Podcast.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.